Hi, you scurvy dogs. Welcome to Painting Pirates, Part 2 for Blood and Plunder. As you can see here, we have started painting on pirates again, and we're doing a mass painting, speed painting session, and hopefully we'll keep this under 30 minutes for you guys if you want to stay the whole trip. Just keep an eye on the horizon for that squall or buccaneer. Anyway, let's not talk like a pirate. We've already finished up the flesh base here, so you can see there, and I paint layers, meaning that we start from the skin going outwards usually, and here we're going to be painting mostly their clothing, starting with the undershirts and then moving to the jackets and pants. What I'm going to do now is I'm painting by color, and with the colors, what you're looking at there is I did some research, and with the research I've found that a lot of just undyed linen is the key there, and with the linen being obviously an off-white color, I'm going through and using Pallid Bone by War Paint. It's a contrast color, and I'm going and painting at least one thing on 90% of the figures. This Pallid Bone color gives it that undyed off-white color, and from what I can tell from paintings and stuff, that's very, very common. The next color you might see me do is blue. I've gone a little more vibrant than the regular blue. Blue must have been a common dye amongst the soldiers or sailors at this time period. I've read that wearing a blue top kind of camouflaged you from snipers. Blues and greens, grays and blacks, and of course the undyed linen were very, very, very popular. And so we'll just sit back and watch me paint those for a second. Oh, and detail-wise, I'll probably come back and do some hats, a lot of dark colored hats, and some linen hats as well. Alright, just to make another note here, I'm painting hats, and I did mention like linen hats before. Most of the hats seem to be a felt hat. In this case, you can see I did a straw hat on the character I'm holding now. I thought that'd be neat to kind of a weaved straw hat. And the character I'm holding now has no hat, but the hat's probably made of leather, either dyed or left brown. So you'll see black hats and brown hats usually have a leather make or a hardened felt, not felt really, like a kind of a fedora that you'd see today. And that material, obviously of that age, kind of a Three Musketeers type hat where they pin them up in different angles, sides, front, back, whatever. And that would lead also to the tricorn hats too, which I've seen in both varieties in real life. And then the final detail there, other than the silver on the guns for the working parts and the barrels, looking at painting their scarves, which were usually, if they weren't just straight like a dyed linen type material, they would be stolen. It might be silk that they stole from whatever their victims were. And these would usually be vibrant colors in reds and purples and yellows or whatever, but very bright colors. And being a laborer at one point in my life too, they could have wet these down, soaked them, and it would also cause cooling if worn around the neck or head. As they evaporated, it would cool you off a bit too, if you didn't soak it through down there. If you know, ever been down south, there's a lot of humidity, and it actually might help to cool you off a little bit too, if not absorb sweat. Nice learning channel here. Anyway, enjoy.